My mind is upset. I can change my mindset. Do not be thrown offset. Rumor time reset. Rumor time.
Welcome to Access RUMERTIME Conversations podcast show. My name is Dr. Yvonne Marilaria, and I am one of your co-hosts.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Vanessa Kelly-Brew, and I am also one of your Access RUMERTIME hosts.
And good evening again. I am Geneva Fleming, joining you all the way from the beautiful state of South Carolina. I am just jazzed to be a part of this conversation this evening, just because of the times that we're in. And I'd like to yield to special guests that we have joining us this evening, Ms. Princella Tobias. Ms. Princella, will you introduce yourself to our podcast audience, please?
I sure will. Hello, my name is Princella Tobias. I am the founding publisher of the Benton Spirit community newspaper. And you heard it right when you heard the word community. It is our intention to inform, enhance, showcase, promote, and educate people through multimedia through the Benton Spirit newspaper, right currently in Benton Harbor, Michigan. But we service Southwest Michigan and Northern Indiana, and that's called the Michiana area. I am also the public relations arm for BEST, Building Excellence in Science and Technology. We are the media technology arm, working with Dr. Desmond Murray with all the wonderful things he's doing with BEST. And I consider myself a community connector. It's one thing to reach people. It's another thing to connect with people. And I am so pleased to be here on this show today as your guest. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Quite an extensive resume, and so glad to have your input in the conversation tonight.
Yes, we are very thrilled to have Ms. Tobias with us this evening.
Thank you, Princella. Welcome again. So this evening, we would like to talk to everyone about what is currently going on in this world. Right now, there is a lot of fear. There's a lot of anxiety. There are a lot of questions that everyone has surrounding this COVID-19 virus. And so what we understand is that this virus is impacting everyone around the world and in different ways. And so what we wanted to do is talk to everyone a little bit about that this evening.
Yeah, and so we'll talk about, we are not medical doctors, so we're not going to necessarily talk about physical health. We're going to be talking about social emotional health, social emotional wellness, and the consequences, the social emotional consequences of COVID-19 across diverse settings, diverse social settings. We're going to talk about the outcomes. We're going to talk about how COVID-19 is impacting inter and intrapersonal balance. We're going to talk about how the COVID-19 is impacting one's ability to manage and recognize and understand and manage and express and reflect on their thoughts, their interactions, their mindsets and emotions as it relates to self, others, and their stories and their situations right now. We're going to talk about the social emotional consequences of relationships in diverse settings. We're going to talk about the social emotional consequences of the settings, the relationships, one's ability to express themselves in healthy and unhealthy ways. So those are the things that we are going to be focusing on. Okay, and like Vanessa said earlier, that the fear is at an astronomically high level globally. anxiety and depression and all the social emotional issues or challenges that people faced prior to COVID-19, they have now been amped up. It's almost like they're now on steroids. And so those are the things we're going to be talking about today and as long as is necessary.
Right.
Next several weeks, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we want to give people a voice. We want to be the voice to the voiceless. We want to be the eyes, I guess, to those who feel invisible right now. We want to be able to bring tangible stuff to one's emotions. We want to bring what's on the inside. We want to help you bring what's on the inside out. You know the movie Inside Out?
Right.
Yeah.
That's a lot that you just rolled out, Dr. Larry.
Okay.
So which piece of that would you like to start today? Anybody? Because you're absolutely right. It is so vast. It is deep and wide. And so where would you like to start? Miss Kelly Brew, excuse me.
So, one of the things that I think about is, I guess, drawing back to what I said earlier about the fear and the anxiety that people are experiencing, because this really is an enemy that we cannot see. So the question is, how do you fight an enemy that you cannot see? And so what we know is that we've heard that this can be like transmitted through the air. And so we see people walking around with masks on. We see people walking around with gloves on. And those are things that we feel that we can do to protect ourselves from this. And yet we know that there are people, or have been reports from people who have said, well, I've done all of those things. I have had the mask on, I've had the gloves on, and yet I found out that I tested positive for this. So again, people are unsure of, what they should be doing and what they can be doing. And there is a very real fear there because, again, it's the unknown.
Absolutely. I think really that's one of the biggest things is the fear of the unknown. And the reality is that we're all we're following the lead of the leadership, like the CDC, for instance. But I believe they too are building the bridge while crossing it. And so they're starting with, the immediate resistives, like washing your hands, keeping your area sanitized, that sort of thing. But you're absolutely right. There was some thought or concern that there were maybe some particular contributing factors. But now that myth or that thought is being dispelled because people are popping up in, unusual places, with the disease. So all of those are contributing pieces to the fear that you just mentioned.
I know another factor, and Princella, jump in at any point.
Yes,
another factor is that we didn't mention earlier in the green room is the whole social distancing and the social isolation. And my brother said on Facebook, and he's so right. He said we should not call it social distancing. We should call it physical distancing. Yes. Because when we say social distancing, we're talking about, we're saying we need to break connection socially. And that's not really what's happening. People are interacting more socially.
Yes.
Right? In their homes, on internet, in all different formats. But physically, we have to distance ourselves. And
Yeah.
so I think that is so powerful. And
Oh,
what
very.
yeah, because because words matter,
Yes.
it makes a difference. Because when you hear social distancing, you already start feeling isolated.
Yes. Yes.
Dr.
Iman, that is so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing, because that connects to what Vanessa was just sharing about the fear. And
Mm,
I can only imagine, in fact, have seen in the news how social distancing has become a trigger for many people who,
mhm.
who rely on the social connections. So
Yeah,
you're asking me to not have those connections. And so that can become a trigger for anxiety,
exactly.
maybe even panic attacks.
Yeah,
So I love the thought about changing the language,
yeah.
because we know the power of language, the
Yes, yes. And that's why
stigma that it can create.
yeah.
So
So
thank you for
yeah,
that point.
yeah.
Dr.
So when
Murray,
he that was Dr. Desmond Murray's quote. We should change it from social distancing to physical distancing. And words do matter. Words absolutely matter, especially in these times.
and that's one
Um,
of the reasons why I'm so pleased to be on this particular show. It must run in your DNA, the Murray DNA, because Dr. Desmond Murray definitely hit it on the nail. We need to change those words. And words, they truly do matter.
they
When
absolutely
you
matter.
start telling me, or informed me, or should I say educated me, how you do not even use the word mental, you use socially and emotionally. That
Yeah.
changed the ball game altogether, because that was a stigma on so many people. Behold,
Mm-hmm.
mental, this, mental that, like they were like retards or something. It's how
Mm-hmm.
people perceive that word. And with what you're
Mm-hmm.
doing with Rumor Time and all these programs, your summer program, you're working and you're addressing it from a whole different standpoint, socially and emotionally. And that's exactly what it is. So when we started talking about anxiety and depression, yeah, I started thinking about one other word that it's so small, but it's just called sad.
Sad.
SAD. Some of this is making us sad. When we hear that our
Mm-hmm.
numbers today our numbers have increased, but we're now over Italy's numbers.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad because we love people. And when we started thinking about all that, but then there's a program like this that says, yes, I'm going through emotionally and socially, whatever you want to call it. But there's a podcast, there's a group of people who I can come to and listen to and share what I'm going through. And that's why I'm so pleased to be a guest here on the show, because it can make you sad. It can increase your depression. Your anxiety is through the roof, but now we can come together and share what we've heard, what we've seen, and even what we are experiencing today. So I'm going to call you Dr. Yvonne.
Oh, girl, no.
Dr. Murray's in your family. But anyway, thank you for this opportunity for being here on your show. And just this first topic about the whole name, that says a lot. And
Yeah.
it will change how people really look at this challenge today,
Mm-hmm.
COVID-19.
Thank you for
COVID-19.
sharing that,
Thank you.
Stella. As you know, that's one of the hallmarks of GC Scored, is not focused on mental illness because of stigma.
Okay. All right.
Are you and your family seeking healthy mindsets, actions, relationships, knowledge, emotions, resources, and skills? Well, backed by popular demand, GC Scored presents RUMERTIME Family Summer Camp, a social emotional wellness program starting June the 14th to the 26th at the venue St. Michael and All Angels Episcopal Church, down to the roots.
Welcome back to the Access RUMERTIME Conversations podcast.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We just had some really good conversation in the first segment, and some of the gems I think that was shared in the first segment was Yvonne's note that her brother, Desmond Murray, brought up about the fact that we should not call this social distancing, rather we should call this physical distancing, because there is a difference there. And one of the other things that we talked about that is key is the fact that words definitely do matter.
Absolutely.
And we understand again how language makes a difference to people. How we hear certain words make a difference to people. And when we talk about the fact that words matter and this physical distancing, you know, there can be a point where people feel isolated. And so I think, though, what has happened from what I have seen, even though we have to distance ourselves physically, I have seen more connections with people.
Right.
Via different platforms, social media. There are people who are connecting through social media who is encouraging others, who is trying to lift each other up during this time. And so I'm wondering if you all have noticed that as well.
Absolutely. That's interesting you mentioned that, Vanessa, because just today, what popped up in my inbox was an email from a woman, and actually it's a trail. I'm going to try to minimize it, but the title is Women in Leadership, Encouraging One Another. And it's the whole process of sending a message to someone and then you blind copy, you know.
Oh, right.
And it's this whole thing. But when you receive the message, you send an encouraging word to the person that sent you the message. And it's almost like back in the day, you remember those chain letters?
Yes.
Somebody, but this is in a very positive way, that you choose to either share a poem, an encouraging word, scripture, whatever you choose to share, and you launch it out, and then it will circle itself and come back to you from somebody else will send it to it. So yes, that just happened today, and I thought that it was real neat, really good. It's a way of encouraging one another. So people are sending prayers. So and so that is another way of the social connection and interaction amongst people.
Yeah, and so I think Desmond was on point when he said it should be called physical distancing, not social distancing, because people are connecting more because all of the frills and all of the extra stuff has now been eliminated. And so
the environment is forcing us to connect in a way that we have never connected before.
Yeah, and using, because something. So I will give you this example. My husband and I met online. He lived in London. I lived in Atlanta. And so that was physical distance. But we got to know each other so well because we were able to really connect on an intellectual, emotional level. Without physical interaction to get in the way, right? So you spend more time trying to articulate, trying to express, and finding ways to being creative in how you discuss a topic, how you share something, and so it brought us. I mean, we dated online, we dated long distance for 3 years, Yesterday, we just celebrated our 13th year anniversary. We've known each other, which means we've known each other for 16 years.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And that was during a time where we got to know our relationship was established over physical distancing.
Yeah. That is
So,
a very healthy thing to share.
Right. So there was not a social distancing.
Right.
It wasn't social distancing.
It was physical.
It was physical distancing,
Right.
but we were able to connect on such a deep and intimate level.
Which has brought
Socially.
And
exactly.
The foundation. So your relationship was built on a firm foundation.
Exactly. And so I think the same things can come out of this period of physical distancing for us. We get past the facades, all the different, smoke screens that we put up when we're in each other's presence.
Yeah.
And so
I think we should just adopt Dr. Desmond's term and start to promote that term.
I think so. I agree.
I think we should just talk about it. We should write about it. We need to promote that physical distancing.
Physical distancing.
Somebody like me who is a social being, and social distancing sounds like a curse to me.
Right.
Because I love to engage with others. So I think we should adopt that for this podcast and promote it as much as we possibly can.
Well, let's call it, let's do it. So from now on.
Even taking it a step further, I'm really thinking about sending it in to Rachel Maddow.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah. Let's start this movement. Yes.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. And, in all our interactions and our conversations.
So I believe it can be freeing for a lot of people. Because just the whole thought of social distancing, being connected with staying in place, working in place, parenting in place, I think that it's a disconnect. It's okay to stay in place, but staying in place should not be synonymous with social distancing, if that makes sense.
And the reality is we're not socially distancing.
No, exactly.
Because you're in your house, you're interacting with people. You're social. You're with your family, right?
I'm physically not able to touch you, and we have spent countless times, Yvonne, connecting just
exactly.
For week. So we are socially connected. We're socially connected right now.
Exactly.
Physically not, but we definitely need to promote that. That's a positive one. Because people are at home, this is a whole new norm or dynamic for them, having to be at home, having to manage a space of time for individuals who are used to leaving the house to go to work. For instance, many individuals now find themselves either working at home or out of work. If some individuals have children, if they are working at home, now they're having to manage. And then yet we're hearing this term, social distancing. Like, what in the world does that mean? And how does it impact what I'm doing in my own house? So physical distancing, that's what it is.
That's what it is.
Geneva, there's one thing that I wanted to pick up on that you were just saying about parents now being in the home and children being in the home. So one of the things that I think that has also come out of this is the fact that now this is an opportunity for families to learn to be families again, to be in relationship with one another again. Because this
to be socially connected.
To be socially connected. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
That's a very valid point, Vanessa. I have looked at this COVID-19 as a disruptor. It comes at a time when perhaps there's a need. Now, I'm not suggesting that we needed this this life-altering disease to come upon us. But I've been focusing on the positive of it all. You know, my condolences to families who have experienced death or even the illness itself. But I'm looking at it from a broader picture, and it takes into account what I'm looking at. Some of the things you just said in terms of the opportunity that is affording our families and our communities for us to rethink, reconsider how we do things. It's opening the doors for families to spend some time together, which suggests to me that individuals might need some help in that area.
Yeah.
Some people have been so used to ripping and running and somebody else taking care of the children. And now everybody is under the same roof, and you have to be able to manage that. So we can unpack that at some point in time.
Right. So
conversations.
Teaching people relationship management skills.
Absolutely.
You know,
and work-life balance, you know, how do you balance your responsibilities for work that you're still expected to execute from home and parent your children at the same time, under the same roof? Many of us are not used to that.
Yeah, Princella, you were going to say something?
Yeah, it made me think of two things. One was I was speaking with an educator today, and she says more and more parents are beginning to respect teachers.
Yes, yes.
At home, and just to see what teachers go through from that time frame.
Yes.
And it's important that we start realizing. But the other thing it made me think of is opportunities. And it makes me think of, Dr. Murray, what you did last summer in the home of Notre Dame, South Bend, Indiana, the home of IUSB, the home of Studebaker. When you had it helped me with it, I believe it was a 10-week program.
No, 10 days.
10-day
10-day program.
Still, where you brought families together to talk about emotionally and socially or school activities, challenges they could be facing. You brought them together as a unit, as a team, as a family. And that's what we're seeing that this COVID-19 is doing, is bringing families together now. I saw a television program. They said to the family, what do you do now? Mind you, they're quarantined. They all want to stay in their home, in their surroundings. They're going back, as I think Geneva said, back in the day, jigsaw puzzles together. You know, now, you know, let's call Auntie so-and-so, but jigsaw puzzles and crossword puzzles and Monopoly and board games. But it's all about coming together as one. In this same space, how we've been able to take COVID-19 to bring us together. And your organization, it hit me just then about your summer program. It's exactly what you started last year.
Yeah, that I didn't think about that, but that is true. The RUMERTIME Family Summer Camp that we started in 2019, bringing families together to deal with their social emotional challenges. And the goal and the hope is to have it again this summer, but you know, we'll see what COVID-19 allows us to do.
Well, again, we've had some really good conversation about some of the positive things that we have seen that has come from this COVID-19. We've seen now that people are learning to be connected with each other in a way that we haven't been in a long time. We've said that this is providing an opportunity now for families to learn how to be in relationship with one another once again. And they're having to learn that by navigating how to do this work-life balance, right? And we've talked about the fact that, you know, now people are able to like do things together as a family, like play games, right? Monopoly and doing puzzles together.
And Scrabble.
And Scrabble. And even just taking the opportunity to sit down and talk to each other.
Absolutely.
Yes.
and just
get to know. You get to know your
I'm sorry, Dr.
spouse,
Larry.
your
Go ahead.
children. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I've been so impressed, working from home every day, but it does my heart so much joy when I look out in the morning and I see parents walking with their children. They are exercising. All of these little people and big people together walking the neighborhood. So, they're getting that exercise in there. That is family interaction time. And that's a very good use of the time.
All right, so we're learning to get back to the basics of what family really means, right?
And that disruptor that I'm talking about, it's moving away from the mundane, the mediocre, the status quo, and getting back to basic, to the things that really matter. And family first. So I'm happy to see the positive things that's coming out of this COVID-19. And the decisions that are being made focus on the disease, but I'm looking at the good things behind it that's happening.
All right, that's a great upbeat thing to end on, right, for this section. So what we're going to do is we're going to take another break. And when we come back, we're going to have more stimulating conversation.
How would you like to take your life coach with you wherever you go? Well, GC Squad can make that happen for you. Purchase the RUMERTIME Guided Activity Journal on Amazon.com or directly from GC Squad's online store at www.org for the price of $19.99. Welcome back to the Access RUMERTIME Conversations podcast.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. As I said before, we have had some really great conversation around this COVID-19. So while there is a lot of fear and anxiety and stresses that people are dealing with, there are also some really good things that are coming from this COVID-19 during this time. And so again, what we're going to do is let Yvonne jump in and have her say about it. Yeah, her thoughts.
Right. So we talked a lot about the different settings that the COVID-19 is impacting, and it really is impacting every segment of society. It is impacting every area of our development as people, as humans. And so our focus is at the Access RUMERTIME Conversations podcast show. Our focus is on the social emotional well-being of individuals across the lifespan, across diverse social settings. And in some of our discussions off set, we were able to identify and list some of the areas, some of those social settings and some demographics in which the social emotional consequences are really hitting hard and is having two sets of effects, right? We're seeing multiple, but if we put them in categories, you can categorize it as some of the consequences are constructive and some of the consequences are destructive, right? And we're talking about, again, remember, I want to bring us back to what our focus and emphasis is on this show, the social emotional wellness of humanity, right? And so of our development. And so if we were to have a sheet of paper and put down the center a line, draw a line down the middle of that paper, and on one side on the left side of that paper we put constructive social emotional consequences, And on the right side of that paper, we put destructive social emotional consequences. I promise you, we would find multiple, as Geneva said, an abundance of either one or the other. And that's real, right? That's real. Those are real. And some of the areas, some of the demographics that we talked about are military families. We in, like I said, outside of the set, we talked about how the COVID-19 is impacting from a social emotional wellness perspective, military families. What are some of the other ones we talked about? What are some of the other demographics? Yeah.
We talked about grieving amongst families, especially if you're losing a loved one.
Grieving, yes, that's huge. That's huge.
About education from
the grieving is huge,
and how it's affecting the students, the teachers, overall.
We also talked about the technological aspects of this, right?
Yes.
How for those who are needing help, social emotional help, that there is now like teletherapy that is happening, which is something that is different. So that is also being impacted.
Geneva?
Yeah, I was going to, and it was mentioned about grief and loss and how broad that is, because it's the one thing to have the focus on the loss of a loved one, but that is also compounded by the fact that families may not be able to properly have a memorial, properly get a person into a mortuary. I was informed today that there are some mortuaries that are refusing to receive individuals who have passed away as a result of the virus. And then there are other situations where loved one may have passed away in one city, family lives in another city,
yes,
but because of all the, the travel bans and whatnot, families aren't able to connect. So many levels. And as an African American woman, I know one of the things that I've experienced in this community was the inability to actually have a service because of the mandate the mandate about physical distancing, right? And because of physical distancing, churches are closing. They are limiting the service and the way they do service. And so families are kind of left in a quandary or in this vulnerable state, a state of unknowing on what to do. So perhaps in our future conversations, we can unpack some of these concerns. But that it all fits with grief and loss, because I would imagine that having all of these other nuances piled on top of the fact that, I can't even prepare, a decent homegoing service for my loved one, it would impact my ability to adequately grieve. So it takes grief to a whole nother level.
A whole nother level. It takes everything to a whole nother level. And you think about pregnant women, right? Pregnant women.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Pregnant women. We also want to look at domestic violence, the increase, child abuse, parents having to stay at home with their children, and some children who were receiving special needs services at school, psychological services at school, who are on medications, and parents, the only break they had was when the kids went to school. Now they are home all day together, and they do not have the skills to manage themselves or manage the children. And it's all compounded by the physical isolation, right? Because people are now isolated. Then we can talk about the elderly, who one of the main things for elderly people to thrive and that keeps them alive is social interaction and connectedness. Many of them are church. They get their community from church, going to church. I know my mom, 90 years old.
Right.
That is where she comes alive.
That's the lifeblood. I was going to say the lifeblood.
Yeah.
Social interaction.
Yeah, that's social interaction. And so all of these domains of society, all of these segments of society are being impacted by this unseen micro, super micro organism that has completely shut down the entire world.
The world.
That is bringing economies down, is bringing societies down, is shutting everything down. This microorganism, unseen. Yeah. And so we are going to be helping ourselves and you, our listeners, with ways to manage this and cope with and through the COVID-19. Because the reality is, ladies, the reality is that prior to COVID-19, the global burden of health, okay, I said global burden of health, was the number one global burden of health in 2020 was anxiety and depression prior to COVID-19. And we know 1 in 4 adults and 1 in 4 children in the US at any point in the year suffer from anxiety and depression. This is pre-COVID-19. Now, I have no data to support this, but I could almost bet that 1 in 4 for adults and children is 1 in 1. Yeah.
Has increased astronomically.
It is. And so we're going to give you some practical strategies and skills, not skills, practical tools and strategies that you can use, because many people can't go to a therapist. Many people don't want to hear the word therapist. And it's still stigmatizing. They don't, they're not. And also, we have to remember the COVID-19, there's a lot of stigma associated with it too, right? And so the RUMERTIME process, GC score, the cultivating seed system framework, one of our foundational principles of practice is destigmatizing, demystifying the whole construct of mental illness and mental health. And therefore, we do not use that terminology. We talk about social emotional wellness and well-being. And so we have a couple of strategies. Well, we have multiple strategies, but we will share 2 of them with you today. One is we would encourage you to journal. And we have the RUMERTIME Guided Activity Journal that you can purchase online at Amazon. Again, you can purchase the RUMERTIME Guided Activity Journal online at Amazon.com. That journal has multiple ways for you to express yourself. And one of the unique things about the RUMERTIME process is that it helps you basically to perform an autopsy, to basically dissect your thoughts, your interactions, your mindsets, and your emotions. The power is in your hands to help you help yourself. And so, for example, if you are having exceptional fear, you're afraid that the COVID-19, like all of us, is going to get you. Fear is an emotion, right? And another principle of practice, another principle that we believe in is that behind every behavior, at the root of all behavior or interactions are beliefs. And beliefs are a cluster of thoughts, right? Beliefs are attitudes or mindsets. And those come from the thoughts we think. And so at the root of behavior or interaction are these thoughts. So you're having this fear, which is the emotion, and thoughts are at the root of behaviors, and they are at the root of emotions. So when you're feeling the fear, what I would encourage you to do, what we would encourage you to do, is to track that fear and see what it is you're thinking. Are your thoughts constructive or helpful? Or are your thoughts destructive or harmful? Because at the root of your emotions, at the root of your behaviors, at the root of your attitude and mindset are your thoughts. And guess what? You have control over which thoughts you allow to land and fester. You get to manage if thoughts grow or if they go, depending on how much attention you give to them. It's like a weed, it's like a tree, it's like anything that grows. It will grow if you feed it, and it will go if you weed it. We have to first look at our thoughts. What are we thinking about the COVID-19? We know what the facts are, but many of us we're spending way too much time listening to the news.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So those are some of the things, we have to learn to manage that, right? So, but then we're also listening to a lot of propaganda and conspiracy and a lot of information that is just tormenting us because we are not understanding the fact that you and I have control over what we put in, what we allow into our senses. You have the power to turn on, off the TV, on, off the radio, on, off. You got the power. What you speak, all of that we have control over. And that goes into our brain, our mind, and we have these thoughts. And these thoughts then cause us to behave certain way or have certain attitudes or mindsets, which then translates into behaviors, which then translates into emotions. And so you get the opportunity to go to the root of that and change those thoughts, replace those thoughts with productive and helpful thoughts. And when you do that, you're going to see your emotions changing, and you're going to see your behavior changing, you're going to see your attitude changing. And yes, COVID-19 will still be around, but it's not that, because we can't control COVID-19. We can't even see it. So we definitely can't control it. Okay?
So we can control how we respond, right?
Say it again.
We can control how we respond to it.
Exactly. And in order to control how you respond, you have to know what it is you're controlling. And so you have to go back again to the root. What am I thinking about COVID-19? What are my thoughts? Because that is directly impacting your interactions, how you behave. It's directly impacting your attitude or your mindsets, and it's directly impacting your emotions and how you're feeling. So we have the power of choice. We get to choose our thoughts. We get to choose how we respond to COVID-19. And there's a way, we have an activity sheet that for all ages to help you dissect your thinking patterns, tracking your thinking is what we call it, tracking your thinking. And we also have the journal, which helps with mindfulness. It helps you ask yourself questions that a therapist would ask you, just in case you don't want to go or you don't have access. Asking yourself certain questions will help you learn to manage this excessive and, overwhelming fear that we're all experiencing. And so you can email us at arc_podcast@gcscored.org. arc_podcast@gcscored.org. And this information would be in the description of the podcast. Okay? Send us your email. We will email you a PDF copy of the worksheet, Tracking Your Thinking.
Right. Thank you so much for that, for those tips, Yvonne. These are certainly tips I think that everyone can use. And things that I thought was very helpful was for people to understand that they have control over which thoughts they allow to grow or to go, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And whatever they feed is what grows.
Yes. Whatever you feed will grow, or whatever you weed will go.
All right. All right. So again, this has been some wonderful conversation this evening. And I think that it is helpful to the listener who is having some anxieties or fears or challenges around this COVID-19. But again, it's about keeping in mind what we can control and those things that we cannot control, to let it go.
Let it go.
Right? And
Yeah.
you gave wonderful tips on how to get to the root of that. You told us about being able to journal.
Right.
Root of our thoughts, right?
Yes.
What are our thoughts on this COVID-19? Understanding that, and then being very mindful about what types of questions we ask, okay? Because those are the things that will help us learn how to manage our thoughts and our responses. So thank you so much for those tips. And so we have come to the end of this ARC podcast. And so as usual, what we always do is we like to leave everyone with some note, some message, I guess, for that each of us has or would like to share with everyone. So.
Okay. So 10 seconds.
10 seconds.
I'll start with a really quick, so that means I'll have to talk fast, right? I'd like to share information about the power of auto-suggestion and encourage people to follow suit. You know, there was a French pharmacist by the name of Emily Couret back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, who came up with a phrase to cure people of all ailments. And that phrase was, every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. And he encouraged people to just say that as often as they could. And according to the research data back then, people actually did improve and did heal from various ailments. So I'm encouraging people today that perhaps they could use the power of autosuggestion by saying that phrase, every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Geneva. I love that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Princella?
Hello, yes. I started a campaign a while back called Love Is, and I'll leave you with two Love Is. Love is the power of positive thinking. And my second one is love is the power of prayer. And with that being said, I wish all of us to always remember each other in prayer and in positive thinking. And thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Princella, for joining us.
So with the 10 seconds that I have, I would just like to give to everyone, being brave is not the absence of fear, but being brave is having that fear, but finding a way through it.
Do it afraid, right?
Do it afraid. Yeah.
That's right.
And mine is my 10 seconds is going to be, remember that you have the power to choose how you want to go through, and you go through COVID-19 in terms of your social emotional wellness.
All right.
So thank you for listening. Send in your questions to arc_podcast@gcscore.org. Go to amazon.com to purchase your RUMERTIME guided activity journal. Send us your email so we can send you the Tracking Your Thinking worksheet that will help you go through the COVID-19.
You have been listening to the Access RUMERTIME Conversations podcast, where the time is always rumor time, where we equip you to solve your problems one rumor at a time, where we educate you to transform your stories one rumor at a time, and where we empower you to become your own life coach one rumor at a time. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.